Okay, it is now 1 o'clock, so we will call to order this meeting of the California Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board for Tuesday, July 13th, 2021. We are meeting today in the Venture Oaks office. We have a full complement of board members live and in person for the first time since pre-pandemic, so want to welcome you all here, but we are also Zooming this meeting out, and there are people around the state who may be participating today via Zoom. So if you are watching on Zoom, welcome, and you will have an opportunity, if you wish to make public comment during that portion of the agenda, to comment via Zoom. We begin our meeting with item number 1, a roll call of the members. The chair is present. Member Vice Chair Reeves?
Present.
Member Eng?
Present.
Member Allen?
Here.
Member Kent Monning?
Here.
Okay, let the minutes show that all members are present. We will now go to approval of the minutes of the May 19th, 2021 meeting, the open session of that meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, it's been moved that we approve the minutes of May 19. We'll do a roll call vote. Member Reeves?
Aye.
Member Eng?
Aye.
Member Allen?
Aye.
Member Kent Monning?
Aye.
Chair is also aye, so please show the minutes of the open session from May 19th being adopted unanimously. We now move to approval of the minutes of the closed session for May 19th. Is there a motion to adopt those minutes?
So move.
It's been moved. We'll go by roll call vote again. The chair votes aye. Vice Chair Reeves?
Aye.
Member Eng?
Aye.
Member Allen?
Aye.
And Member Kent Monning?
Aye.
Okay, we now move to item number 4 on our agenda, which is Chair's report. Not a lot to report today, just glad that we're all back together, and hopefully this will now last. Hopefully there won't be any problems in California that cause us to go back to pandemic status. In the last month, just for those who are watching, as a board member, as a board, we meet once a month, and our meetings are usually about an hour in length. But the work that these folks do next to me is done between meetings, and they hear many, many cases, appeals of employees, employers, EDD often involved in these hearings, and our cases are heard by our judges at the field offices, but any appeals of those cases are heard by board members. And in the last month, they've heard more than 500 cases between them. So want to thank them for all that work on behalf of the people of California. I also want to thank the members most responsible for our last newsletter, which Michael Allen and Laura Kent Monning, I know Michael Eng was involved too, putting out a great newsletter. It came out right after our June meeting, so it's appropriate now to thank you for that, and I'm sure that they will thank various staff who were also heavily involved in creating the newsletter.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Vice Chair as well for his contribution.
Oh, he helped?
Small.
Also want to just welcome to the board, because this is the first time I think we've seen you in a live board meeting, Kristen Song-Kao. Welcome, Kristen. You all worked with her a lot, board members, but now you get to meet her. In fact, this is the first time for some of the board members getting to meet Laura Kent Monning, who is no longer a new board member, but is new to a live and in-person meeting. I think you've all met Seek Run, who came on shortly before the pandemic hit us. So we're all getting to know one another. There's one more person, Greg Crital, who's not here today, but you'll all meet him at the next meeting. He has been hired as an assistant to Executive Director Kutry since the pandemic. And speaking of Executive Director Kutry, Chief Judge Kutry, this is his first meeting since the pandemic, seeing you all live and in person. I know you've all worked a lot with him. But it's good to see everybody here, good to have everybody back. And with that, I will turn us over to board member reports. Item number 5 on our agenda will begin with our Vice Chair, Dan Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a formal report. I just want to echo your comments in that it is so nice to meet board member Kent Monning, who we've worked closely with for probably a year now, but have actually never face-to-face met. And it's also so nice to see all the staff in the same room. Normalcy is coming. So it's fantastic to be here, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Member Eng.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also wanted to echo your and the Vice Chair's comments when I came a little bit earlier this morning to take the first flight out, and I wanted to tell you how wonderful it was to come back to the office and reconnect with some of the staff. Not all of them are here. Many of them are some of them working remotely. But I wanted to tell you that I really appreciate those of you that came to the office some every day to do your job during the pandemic, and just myself coming to the office, realizing that it's not turning on a Zoom for an hour, but really having to make the effort to be here is really admirable. You made it possible, and you continue to make it possible for the board to function seamlessly. And those of us that work from home and the people of California owe you a great debt of gratitude. So thank you. I got a chance to say hello to some of you. You know who you are, and to the rest of you that I didn't get a chance to. I hope that I'll get a chance to do that in the next before the next board meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mike. Member Allen.
Yeah, I would just like to take the opportunity, as I do in almost every meeting, to express my gratitude for all levels of the organization, whether it's our judges, the support staff, IT, the judges, all the people who make this organization work. And that I'm glad that Member Ng brought up the fact about it has not been lost on me this last year while we've been working at home on our cases, all the people who are out there, frontline workers with the public, and just not in our agency, but throughout the state. And so I'm very grateful to be back in person here with everyone. And also, although I singled out the vice chair, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the entire agency's personnel staff for the huge outpouring of contributions. They've lent us their stories. They've lent us their children for certain stories. And it's been really, to me, a community building for an agency where we're so far flung across the state, for a way for us to kind of share our common humanity. And so I want to thank all the contributors to the newsletter. I'll let Laura speak to that as well, but I will tell you that it was, I've called it a labor of love, and it was. And I just look forward to, and anybody watching this within our agency who wants to contribute to the newsletter, please, we want to tell those stories because they're meaningful to all of us. Thank you.
And Mike, if someone wants to access the newsletter, they just go to our CUIAB website, or?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Member Ken Monning.
Thank you, Chair Block. So I do have a couple things to report. One, just about the newsletter. I wanted to specifically thank those who are on the team that made that happen. Mariluz Warden, Maria Aguirre, Greg Kretal, Member Allen, of course. We got a lot of content this time, and it was really great to work through it all. And I hope it was a nice way for everyone to connect among the agency, especially as we've gotten through this trying time together. The second thing I wanted to just touch on was when I was up here last month, I had the privilege of observing and then actually lending a hand a little bit with a copy machine for the pop-up event, the identity verification pop-up event that so many hardworking people at this agency had 2 days of this pop-up event, and I'm sure Chief Kutry will touch on this more. But to be out there and to see what it means to have people be able to interface with a real human being to help them get sorted through their identity documents, and that's really the make it or break it for them to access benefits. And I am fully supporting our agency trying to expand that further, and I really see that that is just a crucial part of what we can do to help Californians during this time. And I thank all of you who worked so hard to make that happen, and thank you for letting me step in to observe and help a little bit. And then last, I just wanted to recognize fantastic Judge Becky Bach on her new role here. We are so lucky to have her now in charge of training. She has trained tens and tens of ALJs now. She trained me coming on, and I am so grateful to have her at the helm of continuing to train those coming aboard to help our agency. So I just wanted to congratulate her and recognize her and all her hard work. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you, Laura. I'd like to thank all the board members for their comments, and it's good to see you all. They're all wearing pants today. Haven't been able to verify that for the past year and a half, but and Michael does not have the Golden Gate Bridge behind him.
No,
so.
I did not.
Okay, we will move on now from that to our public comment. Again, members of the public, if you wish to make comment, indicate by raising your hand on Zoom or otherwise indicating on Zoom. And I'll be told by our moderator if we have any folks who want to make public comment. We'll pause for about 15 seconds, give anyone who wishes to make public comment a chance.
Chair Blount, I have no hands raised for public comment at this time.
Okay, we do have no members of the public who wish to make comments, so we'll move on from item number 6 to item number 7, which was a report from our Chief Judge and Executive Director, Mike Kutry. Mike?
Thank you, Chair Block and board members, and for the warm welcome to my first in-person meeting. It's a pleasure to see you all in person. Zoom experience has been trying for us all, so it's an exciting change. I'll start by reviewing some of CUIAB's workload and timeliness measures, and then address some of the other operational issues we faced at the last meeting. Regarding our workload, over the past 5 months, it's felt a bit like a broken record. We were seeing 200 to 300% increases in our workload compared to last pre-pandemic month of March 2020. I am pleased to let you know that the overnight batch transmittals fell to approximately 81% of pre-pandemic levels in the month of June. So while that is still high, it is a huge breath of fresh air in terms of our overnight workloads. We're finally able to produce more cases and resolve more cases every day than we get overnight. Those trends continue daily, so I hope by next month's report an even favorable dip in the amount of transmittals en route from the department. Background, a large number of the appeals we have on our shelves today came as a result of the nearly 900,000 denials that the department issued in December. Most of those identity related, ties into the identity pop-up pilot that member Kent Monning addressed, and I'll talk about a little bit further. Where do we stand in terms of our numbers today? We still continue to be far below the DOL requirements in 30 and 45-day time lapse, but we still meet or exceed the national average. So all states, virtually all states, are struggling with their timeliness figures in that regard. California is far exceeding the national case average for average case age, which is the average case age in your inventory. The national average is currently 112 days, and ours sits at 74.2 days. And that is a direct reflection of our efforts to resolve the oldest cases first as they come into it. Looking forward, we continue to implement several strategies to best serve the appellants in the fastest manner possible. As appeal transmittals decline, we're staying the course on recruitment and training. Interviews have been concluded on the next group of ALJ hires, and the next group of judges are in the hiring process as we speak. Our very capable new presiding judge, Rebecca Bach, begins her next training cohort in August. Those folks will get back up very quickly. I'm happy also to announce that several judges will be returning to CUIAB who left to pursue other opportunities several years ago, and so they'll be back up to speed very quickly. In the field offices, judges and staff closed over 33,000 cases in June. They do that by way of increased case assignments, team calendars, and an exceeding amount of volunteer efforts wherein a judge will take extra cases each week to help clear the backlog. With more judges joining the field offices, our production continues to increase. At the last board meeting, we talked about the identity pop-up, and we had 1 day into that project when we met. And the second day, member Kent Monning participated in was the day following the board meeting. We had an overwhelming successful appearance rate. Over 60% of people who were invited presented hard copies of their IDs and secondary documents, and were able to have their appeals resolved within days. The remaining group of those appellants did not appear at the invited pop-up and were scheduled for full follow-up hearings. Those will all be concluded by this week, and we'll have a really solid picture of the makeup of our groups of people that we invited for hearings or for scheduled identity appearance rather. So our next step is to take that statewide. And so we've picked 3 field offices, 3 of our largest field offices that have the physical plant necessary to run this on a much bigger scale. And so I'll be reporting to you at the next board meeting about those efforts. There's an overwhelming success thanks to the executive team and the Sacramento field office members who participated. And of course, member Kent Monning helped us on the second day as well. And I think she enjoyed interacting with the public as much as our staff did. I am happy to report that we had no COVID impact closures since the last update. I'm hopeful that continues. I generally close with a security update. We had one incident since the last meeting. On June 25th, our Fresno field office was vandalized with anti-government messaging. Did not appear to be directed toward CUIAB or EDD, and we are fully cooperating with law enforcement in their investigation. To conclude this report, though, I would like to congratulate two of CUIAB's judges who, over the weekend, were appointed to the Superior Court. Judge Michelle Kazadi of Inglewood was appointed to the Los Angeles Superior Court, and Judge Stephanie Sato of the Bay Area office was appointed to the Alameda Superior Court. Both will be joining their respective benches in August. They were outstanding contributors during their time to CUIAB, and we will miss them, but we congratulate them on their well-deserved appointment. That concludes my section of the report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mike, and congratulations to the judges you had mentioned who are now elevated to Superior Court. At this point, we have a chance to ask questions or make comments related to Chief Judge Kutri's report. But when we're in person, as opposed to how we've done it on Zoom, it's just if you have something to say, raise your hand, I'll call on you and you can say it. Don't worry, everybody will get a chance if they wish to make comment, but nobody has to feel like they need to think of something to say because we're going around the table. So does anybody have anything? Okay, we'll start with Vice Chair Reeves.
Mike, nice to see you. I want to make sure I heard you correctly. You said you closed roughly 34,000 cases in June of this year. And if I read the documentation that you provided in this packet for this month's board meeting, last year it was about 20,000.
We averaged approximately 18 to 21,000 cases a month pre-pandemic.
So now we're up roughly about 35%,
Yes,
ballpark?
that's correct.
All right. So, and you're still staffing up, but clearly the staffs that Becky's helped train are proving to be beneficial in that the workload that's being tackled is significantly increased, right?
That's correct.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Member Eng, you had a comment.
Yeah, just a brief comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Chief Judge Kutcher, I wanted to definitely include my thanks to you because during the pandemic, I knew that you attended many in-person meetings. I saw you down in LA a couple of times. And to ensure the personal attention and the seamless transition pre-COVID to during COVID and now a little bit post-COVID and kind of a hybrid. I just wanted to clarify that in regards to the question I raised, it's in the minutes at the last board meeting about the status of the appeals being referred directly to CUIAB as well as EDD, which will have quite a significant impact. It's my understanding that there are no updates and that you'll be keeping us informed should that momentous occasion occur, which I think will have some implications on our caseload and the ability for the public to hear their appeals in a more expeditious manner.
That's correct. Our regulation package that the board passed in April is still under consideration for forwarding to the Office of Administrative Law. It will then be open to public comment and refinement by the Office of Administrative Law, and then sent back to the board for its final review. We're in the middle of that process. And
So just a hypothetical, is it appropriate for the board to make comments during the public comment period, or would it not be?
the rules for the public comment period will be posted by the Office of Administrative Law. So when we get there, we'll keep you apprised.
Yeah, if you could notify us if it is appropriate. I would like to suggest that the board possibly make a comment. Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you, Mike. Member Allen, do you have a comment?
Yeah, it's a question, and it's maybe for the benefit of viewers who might be watching today. When you talk about so many of our cases have been identity cases that we're dealing with. So could you kind of explain the actual nitty-gritty, the logistics of doing these pop-up identity and what the process is and what you're asking for when these people come before us?
Sure. We select cases that are identity related only, so that they don't have any ancillary issues that would also need to be decided. And we invite the public to one of our field offices, in this case downstairs in Sacramento. And we ask them to bring the originals of the documents they've submitted to the department and in person so that we can match them up to the holder of the document and accept them as evidence. We then offer them the opportunity to attest to their identity and to the authenticity of the documents they're submitting, and they'll sign a declaration to be their appearance in the case. Once they do so, it can be taken by a judge almost immediately and reviewed, and then a decision issued. So that is the process. It is very logistic intensive because of the way we've been closed for so long, and we have to minimize our exposure to the public and protect them as well. So it does require a limited amount of invitations per window and quite a bit of human interaction in terms of having people queue up appropriately, maintain social distancing, and of course preserve that person-to-person contact with plexiglass or other barriers.
So what I'm hearing, for those who follow the instructions, it's actually a very streamlined process that helps the cases be adjudicated much quicker. That's what I'm hearing.
That was our intent, and that has proven.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, we'll move to item number 8 by Jody Remke, our presiding judge for appellate operations. Jody.
Block and board members, my report will be brief this month. I'm just going to report on the June performance indicators that are in your packet. And as you can see from the numbers, the board met all the Department of Labor guidelines and standards for the month of June. That includes both the number of cases closed in 45 days or less and those cases closed in 75 days or less. The 45 days, we are at 86.2%. 75 days, we're at 96.1%. And also you can see that the case aging, we are at 35 days, and the standard is 40 days or less. I'm pleased that the 45 days or less standard has increased from last month. As you recall, we were only at 47% for the month. We're up to 86.2. So overall, the board and the caseload is healthy, and we're doing well.
Very good. Thank you, Jody. Any questions or comments?
Comment?
Member Allen.
Jody, I always thank you for your help in these cases, but I just want to compliment the appeals judges. I know very recently in a lot of the cases, they go over and beyond to answer our questions and to look at every possibility in terms of trying to adjudicate the case in a way that's correct. And so I just want to give my compliments to our board authors. That's not to say that our field judges aren't doing a great job as well, but we're a little bit more intimately involved with the appeals judges here. And I really do appreciate them. If we have a question, just like yourself, going above and beyond to answer our questions so we fully understand the implications of our decisions. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure they'll appreciate that, and I'll pass that on.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael. Member Eng.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Presiding Judge Remke, for appellate operations, in reviewing the minutes for the last month's board meeting, I find that I was remiss in failing to add to Director Kutry's and Vice Chair Reed's report, seconding their remarks, thanking you and Mr. Gavin Powell and others for your work to ensure that the copies submitted for identification cases are at the highest quality and also quite expeditious when we've requested a little bit more clarity. And that in the interim since then, the cases have been much more easily adjudicated because of your work. And even though the pop-up ID caseload hopefully increases as the best practice is, we know that claimants will still continue to send their documents in, and it's comforting to know that. And finally, I'd like to thank you for impressing on us the importance of meeting the 45-day deadlines, because that is important, and it is it's, I believe, a federal mandate, a federal guideline, and that we want to comply. And I've been much more conscious, as you may know, in trying to meet those deadlines and looking at that fine print about how many days has passed and realizing that there are human beings behind the decisions that we make each and every day. So thank you for that.
Any other comments or questions for presiding Judge Remke? Seeing none, we move on to item number 9, report by our CIO, Chief Information Officer, Jeff Willoughby. Jeff?
Good afternoon, Chair Block, members of the board. I'd like to pass on some good news for our field offices. We're now bringing the last location online with new higher speed network to support more of our services as we do move into cloud-based services. We need that bandwidth, and we're very nearly done with a project to convert our entire network. It's another one of those items that sort of perks along in the background. It's not terribly visible, but it's important to the folks who have to do the work every day to make sure that their speeds to the systems that we use are adequate. And thanks to the network team for making that a fairly transparent maneuver as we go through the process. I'd also like to thank all of our employees for their support and cooperation as we roll out a cohort of new security measures. As I mentioned before, this is an ongoing process, and it's one that we take very seriously. We're really thankful for everyone's good nature as we sometimes interrupt their day for a very brief period to implement these things. And these new tools will continue to improve our security posture, and that's what we should be doing. So thanks to all of the employees who are dealing with our service desk on a day-to-day basis. As we look for even more innovative and accessible ways to interact with the public directly, we've made an online hearing check-in for telephone hearings available. So an appellant can put information that they have in their possession into an online web portal, and they can give us their contact information. What this does is that it takes some time or gives some time back rather to the front office staff of each one of the field offices, because they are answering these phone calls constantly day to day. So we're having the web do some of that work on the front office staff behalf, and we then have direct contact information for our appellants, and we can hold their hearings efficiently. So it's a more streamlined workflow, and we hope that folks will take advantage of it when they do have the conclusion of my report this month.
Thank you, Jefferson. Questions or comments for CIO Willoughby? Vice Chair Reeves.
Jeff, thank you for that update, and it's good news to hear about all the new technologies coming online. At the last board meeting, we had a report regarding updating the vendor issues that we're having. I don't know if this is for Mike or for Jeff, but is there any update on, and maybe this is not the appropriate forum, but
That's a matter that was it's best addressed in a different forum, be it closed session or otherwise.
okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mike. Mike Ing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. C.L. Willoughby, I was reminded by Mary Lou's Warden when I first assumed office, and I spent about an hour trying to open my computer page to the panel, and then asking for help. I think every day, I think they began to recognize my phone number. But when I returned this morning, I was surprised, and Mary Lou said, I'm getting ready for the help desk, that I just seamlessly logged on to the cases. And I know that behind that, someone had to make sure that everything was running smoothly, even though we weren't here. Some of us weren't here for a long time. I think the last board meeting was it March of last year? Was that the last meeting we had in person?
February or March?
February, March, yeah. So I wanted to thank you for that. I do have a question about the appeals monitorization system. I went online to look at the Buzz, I believe. It's something that's called the Buzz. And I very much appreciate those updates. I'm certainly one of those who logs on to that every now and then. I noticed that the last update was in March, and I think that we were at project stage 5. My only question is, are we still at the vendor stage right now?
We are, in fact, we've largely wrapped up all of the functionality that we currently possess.
So we're past 8, we're already at 8?
So we've closed out sprint 7.
My goodness, I'm glad I came back in person to learn that. So I don't know if there is going to be an update on the buzz. I'd be looking forward to it. I think the last one was a few months ago, so I'll be waiting with bated breath. I'm one of the few people who reads it and gets encouraged by it and likes to see how it carries out our mission, and looking forward to great things. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mike. Comments, questions? Member Ken Monning.
Hi, Jeff. Just following up, I think it's great what you explained about the online hearing check-in. How are parties aware of that option? I'm just curious how that's.
So there's a stuffer that goes into the envelope with their hearing notice, guiding them to a very short URL that's pretty easily understood. So they then go to that location and again, with information that they have in hand, once they get that envelope and the hearing notice, they're able to give them their vote.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. With that, I want to thank you, Jefferson, and move on to item number 10, a report from our Chief Administrative Services Officer, Rob Silva. Rob?
Thank you, Chair Block. Good afternoon, board members. I'll begin with a hiring update. Last week, we requested hiring clearance from EDD's Human Resources Services Division for 5 candidates from our recent ALJ1 recruitment, and we actually are going to submit one more today. So official offers of employment for those 6 will be forthcoming shortly. Out of that group of 6, 2 are former CUIAB administrative law judges, so the learning curve for them will be very quick, which is nice to hear. In addition to those 6, we have 10 more that have either been interviewed and are in the reference check process or will be interviewed this week. The intention at the onset of this ALJ recruitment was to bring aboard 10 administrative law judges. However, we requested permission to utilize 20 names from the Office of Administrative Hearings exam list, which is what we use to bring in ALJ1s, in the event that we received a strong candidate pool. Having now obtained a list of strong candidates, and now coupled with the announcement of 2 ALJs that will be departing at the end of this month, we're hoping to, with this recruitment, to bring on a number closer to 20 as opposed to the initial 10. Also, since the last board meeting in June, we brought aboard 3 new support staff hires, and we currently have 5 for which we expect hiring clearance this week. Quick budget update. Last Friday, we received our official 2021-22 budget allocations from EDD's Fiscal Programs Division. This is the data that we needed to finalize a budget proposal for the board, so I will prepare that for the August meeting. All of our field offices' budget requests for this fiscal year have been consolidated and vetted by admin budget staff. That process includes meeting with the cost center managers to go over anything they submitted in which the justification may on paper not be the strongest justification. It doesn't happen that often, but when it does happen, we want to make sure to reach out to management to get elaboration on their requests. So we want to ensure that they get everything they need, both from a personnel perspective and equipment perspective, to deal with this record level of workload. This week, I'll be working with Chief Guthrie to obtain his approval for the various operating expenses and equipment expense code allocations for 21-22 to fit within the allocation, the total allocation of $17.4 million for the 21-22 fiscal year. Again, I'll provide this in great detail at the next board meeting. I have a facilities update. Going back a little bit, in 2010, during the Great Recession, when we were sort of expanding our office space, in our Los Angeles Office of Appeals, we added a separate 12th floor suite in that building for more hearing room space. By 2018, we weren't really using it due to workload, and we entered into a subleasing agreement with the Department of Insurance, who needed space there. They wanted about roughly half of that suite. They, now moving towards a hybrid teleworking environment, no longer need the space in that suite, and they'll be leaving September 30th of this year. Also, during the summer of 2020, Labor Agency approached us for utilization of space in that same suite, and we We gave them half of it, and they've kind of had their eye on the other half. And now with Department of Insurance vacating we're reaching out to Labor Agency to see if they want to expand their presence in that suite in our LA office. Also, you can't tell from this pristine room, but going on outside this room, there's a lot of carpet and paint that we've talked about before. So that project in this building is right on schedule, and by the time we meet again here next month, this room will be done as well. Lastly, we're 2 weeks into the 21-22 fiscal year, and statewide procurement is still shut down for fiscal year closeouts. We're still in admin receiving tremendous amount of requests from the field operations offices, and we're preparing all the documentation. So as soon as we get the green light to do purchasing once again, we can make sure that all of our offices get everything they need as soon as possible. And typically that happens in week 3, maybe week 4 of a fiscal year, of the new part of the fiscal year. So maybe by next week we can get those orders done for everybody. And that's all I have. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Any questions or comments for CAO Silva? Mike Ing.
Okay, well, I'll make mine. Well, thank you very much for that report, and I noticed that there was some announcements about the ALJ2 exam, so I know you're proceeding with that. So good luck on reaching your goal of filling those positions. I did have a question. I know that in your last report you covered, I believe there was a question about the plans to return to work from those working remotely, and I wanted to know, as far as CUIAB's concerned, has there been any changes in the policy to switch from remote to in-person working, or is that still the status quo?
Do you for response?
I'm happy to address that.
Thank you.
So during the pandemic, we quickly pivoted to all of our hearings by phone. And currently, the judges have adapted very well to that. And so some work in the office doing phone hearings, and some telework doing phone hearings as well. So at the present time, we're allowing that to continue as is. On the support staff side, we had other decisions to make because many of those positions required in-office presence. But there were justifications for people to telework. So we created the virtual call center and some other measures whereby people could continue to contribute to our mission while teleworking. Most of those have returned to the office. There's only a handful left. So we're in a good place in terms of our telework arrangement now. And we are also pretty close to complying with the governor's directive on telework, even though it's not a fixed directive. The move towards telework is clear, and all of our managers have just taken CalHR mandated training about how to pivot to telework and keep telework going. So we're in a good spot on telework, and we still maintain that flexibility should things decrease, or should the situation destabilize again, we have the opportunity to pivot quickly again. But the short answer to your question is there has been no state mandate in terms of changing our telework arrangement. And so we're proceeding largely as we were over the last 5 or 6 months.
I almost took one of those mandated training on hybrid work. So thank you.
I'll send you one if you're still interested.
Send me the 2-word summary.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, I have a speakers list. Laura, then Michael, then Dan are on the speakers list. So first member, Kent Monning.
Thank you. This is just maybe for Chief Kutry and for Chief Silva. In light of our hopes to expand the pop-up project, how do you foresee the staffing? It takes a lot of person power to do that, and people are already working really hard. So I'm just curious about with hiring or how we anticipate addressing that additional person power that we'll need for that.
So the pop-ups that we did, that you participated in, were largely run by the executive staff, so that we didn't take any resource away from the field operations. Fortunately, the field operations reception staff are much more experienced at intaking those documents than we are. So it's less of an ask, and dovetails very nicely with what they do and have done for many years. So we don't anticipate needing more staff to roll out the pop-ups on a broader scale. It's just that they would be in different places in the office.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Member Allen.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, and they're human resource related because I have a pretty extensive background in human resources. So I was wondering whether we do an annual analysis of our retention rates for all the classifications that are in our agency.
Yes,
And I was wondering if I could get a copy of the last couple of years of the retention rates.
absolutely.
And then the second question I had is that I know that to a large degree we're dependent upon the larger Office of Human Resources for the state of California, but this question. Let me put it this way: it's been my impression since I've been on this board that I don't believe in luck. I think we've been very fortunate to get a lot of good people working for us over the years. So I was just curious that for the hiring process for the judges, for the hiring process for support staff, IT, to what degree is upper management involved in them, and what is the process by which we interview people and select them within our own agency after they've been cleared by the state for being eligible for appointment?
Well, beginning with support staff hires, the majority of those are handled at the office level by the legal support supervisors, and typically the presiding judge will get involved as well. We have a mechanism in place. It was temporarily not in place. I'm getting a little deep in the weeds here, but
It's a weedy question.
that's
so,
fine.
Okay.
One thing that the EDD's HR office does for us is they allow us to, we essentially can pick the top 5 candidates we would like to interview. We send them the names, and they do eligibility checks to make sure that we're not spinning our wheels by interviewing people that aren't eligible in the first place. That went away for a couple of months, and we've successfully, as of 2 weeks ago, brought that back because it's exactly what we were doing. We were spinning our wheels, and they've fixed it for us. So we have that process in place, and then they hold the interviews locally and hire the best people. Now, with regard to administrative law judges, it's a bit different because we're hiring on a statewide basis. And this goes back to our workforce reductions from 2014, 2016, which were statewide workforce reductions, so we're rehiring statewide. So it's a little more involvement than just simply having the presiding judge conduct interviews, because upper management then has to decide where we can place these administrative law judges statewide. So the chief's office does get involved with the hiring process in concert with the respective PJs of each office for the ALJ hiring.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you, Mike. And Vice Chair Reeves.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Mr. Ng raised a really good question regarding the transition to in-person working. So I'm going to ask Mike, if you mind, a question. You raised the issue of that you're going to continue to do phone hearings, which I understand the advantages of that in terms of speed, accessibility for the claimants, et cetera. But there's also some quality control issues that I have significant concerns around. So what are your metrics that you're using to guide your decision-making as to when to phase that out and start in-person hearings? Or are you considering perhaps not restarting in-person hearings? Because I think that's an important policy discussion that the board ought to have.
Yeah, personally, I'm in favor of in-person hearings. I think it gives you the best quality of hearing and the best record. But at this point, given our limitations in terms of our physical plan, small hearing rooms, private hallways, private lobbies just would not be a situation that we feel would be safe at this time, even with the improving public health situation. So the pop-up that we were talking about is sort of a middle ground there. It gives people who want to the opportunity to show up and face-to-face give us their original documents, which takes a lot of that credibility problem away from a phone hearing. And to attest by way of written declaration that they are who they say they are, and they're providing authentic copies, which can then be held by a staff member and verified. A lot of our cases, credibility isn't so much of an issue, and those cases aren't nearly so troublesome to have by telephone. And a lot of our cases were heard by phone before because of geographic limitations and the good cause requirements set forth in the code. So the long-term picture I would like to see, and I believe that it's supported by the code, that we would return to in-person hearings primarily. But our model has enabled us to proceed with a high volume of cases by telephone. And so we would like to, while covering that identity verification base, it's purely at this point a public safety issue. And most people would still prefer to appear at our hearings by phone. It's provided they can submit everything they need to submit. That's been our problem.
Okay, so I'd just like to summarize that and to say that it's your intention that until it's safe to bring people back for hearings face-to-face, you'll continue on the phone, but as soon as those public safety issues abate, you'll transition back to in-person hearings, for the most part.
That's what we would like to do. So the additional piece of background is that the governor's executive emergency order suspended the right to in-person hearings for administrative agencies. And so we're all operating under that umbrella right now. And the real reason is hardly any of the agencies are equipped from a personal protective equipment standpoint to have a large volume of hearings inside their facility.
And that's entirely fair. I just want to make sure that this doesn't transition to a permanent scenario or an arrangement, but more just an emergency circumstance is going to drive it. And as soon as those abate, then we'll transition back into in-person hearings. Thank you.
And let me just say, as devil's advocate, perhaps, that in my work for the last 5 years with NACUA, the National Association, many of the 50 states have, at least since my involvement, only had phone hearings, sometimes making available an in-person hearing if requested by a party, but normally the default is phone only. And they argue, and this is an argument at each NACUA conference, they argue that having a phone hearing takes away a lot of the conscious or unconscious bias that might arise when you're face-to-face with someone. You're not necessarily seeing a person's race. You don't see what they look like, whether they're pleasant-looking or unpleasant to the judge. They would argue you get a fairer hearing based on just the phone, if it's done well, a phone hearing, than in person. I'm not arguing that right now. I'm just saying there is that other argument out there, for the record.
And my only point is, and I think I could be convinced that phone hearings is a fairer and more accessible process, but it ought to be a discussion that we have as a board.
Yes, agreed. Okay, are there any other comments for CAO Silva? Seeing none, one more announcement that word has come in just right before our board meeting that our California Secretary of Labor, Julie Su, has just been confirmed by Congress to be, or by the Senate, to be the Department of Labor Deputy Secretary nationally. So California will have a good friend in Washington, D.C. now, which is always good for us to have. So congratulations to Secretary Su, and we look forward to the appointment of a new Secretary of the Labor and Workforce Agency, hopefully sometime in the near future. And I'm sure Governor Newsom will turn his attention to that
Who will
shortly.
take over as interim? Who does the interim position fill before?
That's not clear to me. Mike, have you heard anything about that? No,
Okay.
we don't know. It's a good question, though. With that announcement, Mark Wusam, are there any closed session items for today? There are not. Okay, we have no closed session items. We've completed our open session agenda. Is there anything I missed I need to hear from anyone about? In that case, this meeting is adjourned.